Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today on the podcast, we have Robert Ingalls from LawPods. Robert, how are you?
Mike, I'm lovely, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Let's talk about LawPods. I know you made a pretty substantial career shift, right, to start this business?
Yeah, that's kind of putting it lightly. I spent a large portion of my life working towards becoming a lawyer and did it and practiced for 7 years and then decided I didn't like that anymore, like a good millennial. And I wish it was as easy as what I'm saying. Like I didn't like that, so I did something else that I liked. I mean, there was a lot of years in the middle where I was trying to figure things out and how can I make my square peg fit in the round hole of the law, and also doing this thing I discovered in my spare bedroom and then started doing it at my law firm and just loved it. And I mean, most people know how it feels when you get your hands into a hobby and time, like 8 hours passes and you're like, oh, I should probably eat, right? And so I'm doing that in my spare time. And then I'm just counting the hours until I can go back and do some more of that. And so being able to turn that thing that I love doing into a career, like making my hobbies and all of my toys tax deductible, has been amazing.
Yeah. How obvious was it to you that there was a niche there? I mean, I think when you're in that world, right, you're probably looking at it and thinking, man, there's some opportunity here, but at the same time, I know they don't have the staff for it or they don't have the expertise for it. So tell me how that kind of came together for you.
It was one of those things that developed. I'd like to, because people will ask me that question, how did you know this was going to happen? And I didn't know it was going to be like this, but I understood the medium and I understood how impactful it was because it impacted me. When I was reeling, I was in a moment where I was really reeling and I discovered podcasting. I listened to my first one and within 30 days, I owned $1,000 worth of gear, this microphone. And I understood how powerful the medium could be. And then when I started one in my law firm, it was resonating with people. I would hear from people and that was very incredible to me, but I saw it as such a unique ability to connect with your prospects. Because people, let's say you're a family law attorney or a personal injury attorney, if somebody lands on your website, something bad's going on with them or someone they love, and they have questions. And at that point in time, most of the questions were being answered by blogs. And they still are. I think it's great. There's a lot of SEO value there. But I was also into the marketing at my firm as well. I was under the hood. I was looking at bounce rates. I had trackers on my pages. I could see how much of the blogs people were reading, and it was like nothing. And then there were videos, these little minute and a half lawyer with their hands like this, sitting in front of their wall of books and just really uptight. And they've got their video voice on. And the point of your content is not just to answer questions. The point of it is to be a bit relatable for them to think, oh, that is my person. Because let's be real, most good lawyers all know the same stuff. There's a lot of really good lawyers. Which one is your lawyer? And that is where that relatability comes in, that ability to connect with someone. And that was something that was missing and still is from a lot of places. But that was something I saw I was doing. I was relating to people. They were getting to know me, my sense of humor, the way that I approach things, and they can qualify themselves and they can disqualify themselves. Equally important to me. You don't want to end up in a journey with somebody where they find out 3 months in, like, I don't really care for this guy's sense of humor. I don't like the way it's not a good fit. And I think that this is something that could benefit businesses. I think it could benefit law. And I didn't know it was going to go to where it was, but I was like, I think I can make some kind of living out of this. And I did the math. I was like, if I get X, Y, and Z clients, and in my mind, it was going to be mostly local because I was going to clients. I was setting up microphones in their office. And I said, if I get this portion of the market in this, metropolitan area, I can get by. I can replace my salary at least, which really wasn't that much at the time. And it has it's gone in a way that far surpassed what I thought was possible at the time. And so, I'd like to tell you, oh, I knew all this was coming. I did see that there was this need that I felt like voice could solve, but it's grown so much, and it's been really cool to be a part of it because it's changed. When I first started, I had no idea that it was going to be video, that we were going to take that video and clip it into video clips and with captions and branding and put those on social and then make quote cards and then transcripts and blog posts. That there is this gold mine of content marketing coming from a 30-minute conversation that you have with somebody, and a lot of it's evergreen. So it started with a really cool idea, and it's become a lot bigger than I expected.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned that I think is important to kind of call out too is that for anybody who wants to start a podcast, getting your voice and your version and your kind of your flavor out there is important, because when people listen to podcasts, there's so many times where we don't like the person's voice, or like you said, we don't like their sense of humor or the way they explain things. And that will immediately kind of make us check out and move on to the next guy. So what that means is that there's a tribe out there for you. There's a group of people that are going to resonate and kind of connect with you personally. And I think putting your version out there, how you do it, is important, because it acts as such a fantastic filter, and it jumps the relationship to a point where they
Yeah.
feel like they know you to some degree. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to have that first call anymore, because they already got a sense of what you're like and what you're about, and they're coming to that first meeting now even that much more prepared, because they feel like they know you.
Yeah. When you open your mouth, they already have a sense. They're like, they knew what you were going to sound like first. And you said something I love, and it's similar to some advice I've heard before, is if you're for everybody, you're kind of for nobody. And you have to take who you are uniquely and put that out there, and you're going to bring your tribe in. People are going to gravitate toward who you are. I mean, think of some of the biggest companies in the world. Let's look at Apple. They are not for everybody, and they're very open about that. I mean, how many people are going to sit around and say, "Oh, but for on a PC, I can build it, and for 25% of the price," that you're not who they want.
Yeah.
Like and they're very open about that, and it has not hurt them. And some of the most successful companies have been successful by not trying to serve everybody, but by trying to serve one specific kind of person and then saying that in their marketing.
Yeah.
That are you the kind of person that is good for this? And I think lawyers can do the same thing. I have a lawyer in Florida who's very brash. He's very loud. He curses a lot. He does not want that edited out of his podcast. He does not want to be bleeped. Like, if this is going to bother you, we're not going to end up working well together, because this is who I am. I bring myself everywhere I go, and this is who I am. But a lot of people do like it because they're like, he's like us. He's like me. That makes them feel comfortable. Like, he's not going to bullshit me. He's going to talk to me like a real person, not somebody high up here who thinks that they're better than me, that wears alligator shoes and drives a Bentley. This guy gets me. He talks like me.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because we have a client like that as well. We help her produce her podcast, and she's very unapologetic about her approach and the things. I mean, and she's within the realm of being professional, but it's a little I would say unconventional, some of the things she says, because she just blurts it out. She says it like it
Right.
is, and there are way more people that love it than hate it. And it's funny because most people would give her the advice to say, well, you probably shouldn't say that, or you should probably avoid this. And they would all be
Blend
wrong.
in.
Yeah, they would all be wrong, because 9 out of 10 people love her just the way she is. And
Yeah.
it's a truly authentic experience going from the podcast to like actually meeting with her, because she doesn't sugarcoat anything and people love it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you see a lot is pissing people off can be really good marketing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and she's
You know?
she's confrontational about some topics, because that's
Right.
the industry she's in, and it's not that she's trying to pick a fight. It's just, hey
Right.
guys, this is the way it is. If you don't like it, I don't know what to tell
Yeah,
you.
this is how I show up.
Yep. And it's cool that she, the first time that I noticed that in the industry, like, there was a part of me that was like, ooh, because you want to kind of dance around it, because that's how we're kind of taught to behave in a way. But the more time I've spent marketing, the more time I've helped people kind of find their authentic place or whatever you want to call it, the more that's in many ways that's their superpower.
Right. I mean, I think Gary Vee is a good example of that. People frequently, I see these videos where people are like, I want to show this to my kids. Why do you have to curse so much? And it's like, this is who the fuck I am. Like,
Yeah.
this is how I show up. And if you don't like it, there's a lot of other people that can help you. But this is how I go through the world. And I'm not thinking about how other people are going to receive it. I'm thinking about doing what I do.
Yeah.
And it works out really well for them.
Yeah. So shifting gears slightly, let me kind of attack this part of the equation is that we see this, and I'm sure you do too. There's so many businesses out there that want to do stuff like this. They want to have a podcast. They want to have a blog series. They want to create email drip campaigns. They want to do a lot of the things that they're hearing about, especially with the kind of the inflection of AI. Everybody's wondering, well, man, how can I leverage that in my business? But the reality is A, they don't have time. B, they don't have necessarily the experience. It's not that they couldn't learn it, but they don't inherently have that. And C, their time is best spent focusing on what they do, which is, for you, it's law. So kind of packaging that up, how do you see that with your clients? Are they more than happy to say, yeah, we'd rather offload this onto you or let you be the expert, or are they wanting to kind of get involved and get mixed up with it? Because kind of what I see sometimes with clients is they want to be in that world, they want to be in that conversation, but they just truly just don't have the effort or the time to do it.
Yeah, most of my clients now are very interested. I'd say that the main reason, the value prop for them is you do it.
Yeah.
Like this is a marketing tool for them, and they want it to work. They want it to be ROI positive. They want it to be professional, and they want it to be as little work as possible because they've already got 1,000 things going on,
Right.
and they'd rather, like most good business owners, they would rather buy back their time than learn how to do something that is not in their wheelhouse. They are lawyers. Some of them do business development. Some of them spend most of their time in the courtroom. That's where they need to be. And they need to spend as little time as possible on the things that other people can do better. And I'm the same way in my business. I don't
Yeah.
spend my time doing all the things that I can buy back. And the way I talk to people about it is, what do you think your hourly is? Everybody should have one. I know what mine is. And
Yeah.
anything that I can hire somebody for cheaper than that, I shouldn't be there. They're going to be better at it. They're going to be better. They're going to be more efficient. I don't have to spend all my time watching YouTube videos to figure out why I can't get this one thing to twist the way I need it to. And so my favorite clients are the ones that just want to show up. They want to talk. They want to leave, and they want us to take it and run with it. And when you run into people that are frequently, you'll run into this with smaller companies that are trying to save some budget. And they'll say, well, we'll do this, this, and this. And in the beginning, when you're a small company, you kind of take what you can get because you're trying to make payroll and just get some money. And then, but when you find your ideal client, you're not for everybody, right? We're not for everybody either. And now our ideal client, we are a rounding error to our ideal client because what they spend on web development, SEO, and all of those different things, like, it's just we're not really big in that game, and that is our ideal client. People that trust us, they know what we do. They don't want to learn how to do what they do. They just want it to be awesome. And that's the place that we found it a lot. And then here and there, we have some clients that are pretty large companies, but they do enjoy it.
Yeah.
They do enjoy getting into it a little bit, talking strategy, but you can see that lights them up. They're the kind of person that they've got a little bit of a hobbyist in them that's like, ooh, I could see this being like kind of a fun thing for my life. But so it ranges, but most people really do want to focus on what they do really well and leave the marketing to people like us.
Yeah, and that's cool. And to your point, like I think sometimes when a client wants to be involved or let us take this piece on because they think it's going to be some kind of a budget saving measure, it doesn't take long before they realize this is not a good use of my time. And as much as we can coach them or talk them out of that, we do, but sometimes unfortunately they have to kind of learn it for themselves, and then they're more than happy to kind of give us the keys
Yeah.
back and go, hey, dude, can you just take care of this?
Yeah. And I work for lawyers, and the hourly rate of almost any lawyer is significantly higher
Yeah.
than what they're paying us to pull this off for them. And so it ends up being a bad use of their time and money, because they're actually paying more to do it themselves than they would if they were just paying the money.
Yeah. So how do you help the client or law offices see the opportunity with kind of the podcast space? Personally, when I talk to clients about it, I explain to them that in many ways, yes, there are a lot of podcasts out there, but in many ways, the podcast space is still kind of the Wild West. There is so much opportunity and so much space to kind of find your footing and find your voice and kind of find your uniqueness, that there's not, yes, there's a lot of competition if you want to just go apples to apples, but for how each person can serve up their own unique flavor, so to speak, of how they want to present themselves, how they want to create their voice, or what topics they want to cover, there's a lot of room to just be you without any competition at all. And then from that is really the treasure trove of opportunity that comes from creating all the other pieces, the snippets of content, the blogs, the you name it. So how do you explain that to your clients, or do they just readily, do you feel like they already kind of have that awareness, or what's that like for you?
Some of them do, but you really nailed it there, though. With everybody has their own unique thing, and I get this question more than you'd think of, well, isn't the market already saturated? Aren't there already enough podcasts out there? And to me, I reframe it, and I think sometimes if I have the right relationship with the person I'm talking to, I'll even say this to them. I will say, "Well, don't you feel like there's already enough websites out there? Like, why do you have a website? Steve has a website. Like, why would you get a website if Steve has one?" And that's where the realization starts to dawn on them. Oh, right. Why do you have a Facebook? Steve has a Facebook. Like, just let him talk to your prospects. And because why are you doing it is a big question. And most lawyers at this point are doing it to educate prospects.
Mm-hmm.
They're creating content that when somebody lands in their funnel, they're nurturing that lead. They are answering questions. They're speaking directly to that person, letting them know, I know where you are. I know what's going on. I know it's bad. And I'm here.
Yeah.
Like they're making those people feel a little bit better about the bad thing. And that is your unique ability to do that, to tell them in your voice that you know what's next. Yeah, it might be hard, but we've been here. And here's a story about how we were here one time. Every step of the way, this is what we do. Give us your problem. And when you make that kind of content, there's no such thing as a saturated market, because that's your content. That's like saying, why would I have a blog? Why would I make a video? There's no saturation point when you are making content that will nurture a lead who already wants something from you, which is where a lot of people find a lawyer's podcast. Sometimes they'll discover it on social, but more often than not, people find it when they're already in the funnel. It's a way to nurture someone who you've already pulled in. And it's so strong at doing that. And then another way that a lot of my clients are very successful with their podcast is they will make content directed at referral sources. So we have a trial lawyer in Texas who has a podcast called Trial Lawyer Nation. And he's been doing it for years now. And he makes episodes for other trial lawyers. They're deconstructing cases. They're talking about business development, everything you can imagine. And he has a huge following. And that has been such a big business development tool for him. He is getting very well known in the industry from this. People all over the United States know who he is because they listen to his podcast. And he's getting referrals from other people. They have cases and they're like, well, I know a guy there. Let's send it to this guy. And that is one of the real valuable ways I see people using their podcast. Now, there is a point, I think, in that market where it will get harder to compete, because how many can there be? I still think it is the Wild West. I still think that there is room for a general store on every corner right now. Like, we're way away from a saturation point there. But that is an area that potentially could start to have some competition in it. But the area where most lawyers are going to be of nurturing leads, that's not even a question I think they should be asking themselves.
Right. And I think once they get kind of time in the seat, they'll evolve it to the point where they even create more uniqueness for themselves. Because I think, as you know, when you start doing your own podcast and when you start kind of finding your way and you start to figure out what's working and what isn't, what kind of guests work for you, and what kind of message resonates with people, you're just evolving yourself into a better scenario every time you record. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important for people to realize that and not be overly concerned about the first episode. Just kind of focus on the evolution of it. Because I get a lot of clients personally that they want it all packaged up first time. You know, they want the recipe on the first episode, and it's like, well,
Right.
whatever you start with, just know that it's going to evolve no matter what.
Right. I have a friend, Chris Kremitzos. He wrote a book called Start Ugly.
Yeah.
And that's the idea is if you're not willing to do something that you're going to look back in a year or two and go, well, that wasn't very good, then you're not going to get to the point where you're able to look back and say that.
Right.
Because you got to start something. You can't master a skill until you're willing to be bad at it. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be bad. You might
Right.
look back and say, oh, I'm so much better now. But you got to get out there. You got to start talking. But somebody's not going to show up to your podcast and say, oh, this is a tiny bit rough. No, they're there for an answer.
Right.
And if you show up and you give them that answer and tell themselves a little about who you are, you can record that on an iPhone and you're going to be fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be valuable. Those things are two different things.
Right. And the way that you can edit and clip and kind of massage these things now too, you're fine. You can fix a lot of things, but also the rawness is part of what people like. It's part of the realness of the podcast itself. So no, it does not have to be perfect. So
right. Inside our company, we sometimes when we bring in a new employee, one of the things that they will struggle with is overproducing something.
Mhm.
And I heard Rick Rubin say this one time. He's like, most of my job is taking things away. They might show up with 100 tracks on a song, and then it ends up being 8. My job is to take things away, to strip it down.
Yeah.
And that's how I think too. I don't want to make it people aren't there for some big Netflix production. They're there to get some information. The intro shouldn't be 50 seconds long, telling people everything your firm has ever done. Boom, boom. Here's where you are. Here's what you're going to get. Let's get into it. And then start talking about the thing that they're there to learn, because that's what they want. They have a problem. They want to learn from that problem. And if you stick to that, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah. So Robert, what would you tell somebody who's kind of on the fringe or kind of dancing on that line of wanting to start a podcast, or perhaps they've never thought of it and just are looking for new ways to market their business?
Yeah. The first question is why? Why do you want to do it? Because you always want to be thinking from before you start it is, why am I doing it? Who am I doing it for? How does that turn into money? Because a lot of people will say, I want to have a podcast. And that's as baked as the idea is. And they'll start thinking around and they'll say, well, it'll be about things in my town. And we'll talk about things that are interesting. And then people will listen to it while they're mowing the grass on Saturday. And they'll know that we're lawyers. So if they ever have a problem, they'll call us.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're at a point with your marketing where you can do that, that's great. But that's a big initiative. You got to come up with compelling content that will now compete with Joe Rogan and Brene Brown and all of the other big podcasters in the world, the comedy podcasters, because you're trying to be entertaining.
Yep.
And you're also the person. That is a saturated market. Now, I think there's plenty of room for it.
Yep.
But if you are so good at making content that you can compete with real forms of entertainment like that, I think you have a new career. And so generally that's not the angle that you want to approach it from. So think about why you're doing it. What's the purpose of this? How are we going to turn this thing into money? And if you've thought through that, you're probably going to come up with a couple of answers. It's to nurture a lead. So do you have leads in your funnel? Do you have a nice lead gen that is dropping people in that need nurturing? Are you having conversion problems? Where is in the funnel is that conversion problem happening? And once you've understood that part, you think, okay, can I slot this content in? Because a lot of times that's where conversion problems will start to struggle. People land there and then they don't get a good vibe on the front page of the website. They don't see what they need. It looks old, whatever. You've got to have something there that will nurture them to the point that they get past that friction, because they have a lot of options, a lot of options. And you don't want them hitting the back button, because once they do, it's hard to get them to come back.
Yeah.
And if you're having that funnel problem, make content that speaks directly to their problems, because people say, what will I talk about? What are their questions? If you're a lawyer, I will sit down. Content's never a problem. Tell me, list off everything you've ever been asked in a consult in 10 minutes. I mean, we've got 2 years worth of content right there, like in 10 minutes usually.
Right.
And then we just do an SEO report. What are people searching for before they land on my site or a competitor's site? These are all things that people search for because they want to know them. These are episodes. And so I'm thinking about starting that podcast. Is that going to work for me? Or on the other side, with the referral sources, do I have a specific area of knowledge that I can discuss, that I can bring on guests and network with? That's a big one. Network with guests. We're doing it right now. We did not know each other 30 minutes ago.
Right.
And now we do. And when you start a podcast and you can network with other people, that's huge, because then you start to get them in your network. They could eventually become referral partners. They could be clients, depending on the type of industry that you're in. And I would hire an in-house team or hire an agency to help, because if you are at a point where you are ready to do something like this, business is going, you're doing things, you're making money, you're converting. This is a marketing expense. Be ready to commit to it, be ready to do it well, and be ready to let that go on autopilot.
Yeah. No, I think that's huge. I think you hit on some really good points there. And I think you already said it, but kind of the start ugly idea, just get started. You know, if you're at the point in your business where you're looking for that avenue to market and get your voice out there, and you're making money and successful enough to kind of branch off on something like this, just get rolling.
Yeah.
You'll be glad you
and
did.
Usually when you hold back, a lot of times people are holding back because they want it to be perfect, because they're letting something block them. Yeah. They're having some kind of fear, some kind of anxiety. And I have no problem saying that, because I've struggled with this mightily. And it just has to be perfect. And that usually stops people from ever actually executing on something and not ever being able to reap the reward of the thing and learn from it and get better at it.
Yeah, totally agree. So Robert, tell me where we can learn more information about you and LawPods. And I really appreciate you being on the podcast. So thank you.
No, I appreciate you having me, man. It's a good conversation. If you type LawPods anywhere, whether that's, lawpods.com or LawPods into any search bar anywhere, you're going to find us. That was very intentional when I started out. I never took a marketing class in my life, no communications. It was criminal justice and law, but I found out in my early to mid 30s that I have been a marketer my entire life. I'm just from a small town, and I didn't understand that was a thing you could do. So I didn't even have a name for it, but I see the world through a marketer's mind. And I'm just happy that I found my way into a place that I could use that skill set, because I love it.
All right. We'll share all those links on the show notes as well. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and thank you again for being on the podcast. It was great talking to you.
Hey, thank you.
If you'd like to learn more about CyberDogs, share your thoughts, or even ask a specific question about this episode and or the brand Retro Mindset, contact me directly at mike@cyberdogsmarketing.com.